Read it again. Her voice cut through the hush, brittle and cold, as the old file trembled in her manicured grip. Is this a joke? The man across the table kept his gaze steady. You know it isn't, he said quietly, tracing a line on the faded document with his thumb, steadying the edge so it wouldn't bend. A cough from the back of the room broke the silence. Ma'am, the board is waiting, came a junior voice. She pressed both palms flat on the table, papers catching the fluorescent light, and hissed, You had no right. He only looked at her. That's not the line written here. A dozen eyes watched as her hand hovered above the document, then clenched, knuckles white. In rooms like these, everything that mattered fit between the beats of a held breath. Truth has a way of surfacing. Stay with this story until the very end. It started 11 days earlier, before anyone had reason to search the archives. The squat brown van should have been invisible, a delivery vehicle wedged among limousines and a pearl-white Porsche, if not for the way its side panel stuttered every time the driver braked. Inside, Graham Turner steered one-fingered, his left hand massaging the small of his back at each red light. Morning sun reflected in the rearview, slicing through boxes and envelopes stacked with unforgiving precision, each address checkmarked in blocky writing. His workday rarely varied. Send-off at the warehouse at 6:42 a.m. sharp, ache blossoming along old muscle memory from years of warehouse labor. His back had never quite forgiven the price of repetition, but the lease on his apartment demanded consistency in return. 20 days, now 11, until the landlord would knock. At the next stop, a hotel glinting along the strip, he propped the van in a no-standing zone, flashing lights on. He double-checked the manifest, squinting against the print. Box 12, Priority Hotel Laureate Miss Ashton. He recognized the name even before the revolving brass doors spat out a volley of hotel staff, luxury uniforms, anxious faces, not them, her. The woman in crimson, hair salmon blonde, shoes so new the soles barely touched pavement. An heiress, some whispered. Graham only remembered the last time she'd signed for a package, lips curling as if he'd delivered a bill. She stopped short, head cocked, voice slicing. I told concierge I don't want to wait. Is there anyone capable of following instructions here? A junior staffer, the concierge badge askew, stuttered. Miss Ashton, the courier will. She spotted the brown van. You're late. Graham steadied the box, half-smile fixed. Ma'am, it was scheduled for 8:30, you're early. Her eyes narrowed. Early is the only time that matters. Is there someone above your pay grade I should call? He pressed the package into her hands, careful not to brush her fingers. If you want, but today it's just me and 11 more stops. The elevator doors hissed, staffer holding them. Miss Ashton's nails drummed irritation on the lid. Get the manifest right next time. My signature should be enough to make you move faster. Graham folded the delivery invoice, watching the arc of her departure, and tucked it in his back pocket. It was not enough. Back in the van, his back cramped again, but he refused to rub it while her shadow still lengthened at the corner. He closed the van door. A siren started somewhere distant, blue and white flashing off the windshield, but he ignored it, merging back into traffic with a single practiced turn. Breath in, hold, release, 10 more stops. He had no idea the day wouldn't end with deliveries. The kitchen table had been reclaimed, for the moment, from the sprawl of envelopes and receipts. Graham drew a careful arch in permanent marker over Mia's lunch note, adding the word brave below a cartoon smile. She watched him, elbow on the table, chin propped by both fists. The Polaroid, her mother in fireman's gear, Graham younger, both squinting in the sun, sat beside her cereal bowl. She touched its edges, smoothing out the slightly faded corner. Daddy, she started, tentative, then more firmly. When people are mean at your work, does it make you want to not go anymore? He set down the marker. For a beat, he couldn't look at her. He traced the Polaroid, the exact spot where her mother's hand snapped into focus. You're supposed to answer, Mia prompted, not unkindly. He breathed in through his nose, slow. Sometimes it makes me want to work harder, sometimes it makes me want to come home quicker. Which one do you think? She folded her arms. I think both. A small, honest smile, he always told her that was her mother's real legacy, creased his face. That's a clever answer. She grinned, twirling her hair. I could be a detective. He tried again, voice softer. Some people only act tough, honey. They're not always bad underneath. Mia shrugged, unconvinced, clutching the Polaroid, as if the right angle might bring her mom back in sharper detail. He rose, stretching his back until it nearly spasmed, and busied himself rinsing out her mug. An old firefighter's helmet, a keepsake now, too big for any head in the apartment, sat on the bookcase, a silent marker. Once, in the early days after they lost Amanda on that call, Mia had put it on and claimed she was magic enough to keep them both safe. The daily rhythm resumed. Graham packed her lunch, scribbled a different joke on her napkin, folded the rent notice into a desk drawer. In the living room, a battered copy of the Odyssey sat beside worksheets from the night school where he tutored 3 times a week, and the framed diploma, his name in black and gold, had long ago been relegated to the closet. Hey, Mia called, you left out the fruit. He tossed her an apple, voice weary but warm. Don't let anyone see you eat lunch before noon. When is noon if it's boring? She countered. He grinned as she zipped her backpack, Polaroid safe in the sleeve. Clock moves extra slow for detectives. She barked a laugh only for him. He stuffed the lunch note inside her bag, sunlight glimpsing off the Polaroid one last time before the zipper closed. Then her arms around his waist, quick and tight. No questions, no explanations, just warmth. He waited until she disappeared down the hallway before allowing his hand to massage his lower back again. In the city's northern quarter, where the skyline glinted with the chilled sheen of old money, Adelaide Ashton conducted power like a conductor with too many instruments and no time for a full symphony. This morning, her high-rise corner office functioned less as workspace and more as a command center. Assistants moved through, heads bent, each careful not to nudge the smoked glass desk. Adelaide flicked through a digital calendar, dismay barely veiled. Where's the Singapore call? Her voice retained a clipped certainty, each word carrying expectation of speed. A young assistant tried, we're circling back, Miss Ashton, time zones. Excuses later, schedule now, next. Another assistant, hands trembling, hovered beside an unopened box. Do you want the courier's package, ma'am? She sliced open the tape with a metal letter opener. Don't hover, just leave it. The box revealed pristine monogrammed stationery, her own company's letterhead, sent from a rival firm, mocking her with their early release. She stacked the sheets with rapid efficiency, setting one aside for signature. Her phone vibrated, a message lighting up the screen. Not a business text, not technical jargon, a single word, today. Beneath it, a photo attachment, a birth certificate, accession number redacted. Her eyes flitted to a mirror on the bookshelf, brief and reflexive, then down at a framed photo, an old snapshot of a stern man in business attire, his hand on a child's shoulder. She stood a shade taller, voice lower. Get Mr. Benton in here now. Her assistant nodded, scurrying. On the glass table, a bottle of prescription medication lay capped and forgotten, but within reach. Only one other person in her circle knew about it, and he was the reason for the text today. Her lineage was a footnote on another family's tree, a truth glossed over by the Ashtons and their legal teams. No one dare voice it. The world knew her as the legitimate heiress. Only Adelaide and a pair of silent lawyers knew otherwise. The boardroom door eased open. Mr. Benton, stoic, mid-50s, face warped by too many late nights, entered. You rang. Have you dealt with the delivery driver? Already set, ma'am. He'll be processed out by week's end. She straightened. Remind logistics, no room for variables. He nodded, finalized. She let her gaze rest for a moment on the shadowed photo, her own childlike face almost out of frame. We don't inherit our father's mistakes, she murmured, too quietly for anyone to answer. Benton shifted, the optional contract. File it, she snapped, and check every new hire for teaching references. We don't need more educators moonlighting. He exited wordlessly. Alone, Adelaide scanned the city below, everything she controlled and everything she never quite could. She pressed her thumb to the medication cap, thinking of the day's approaching test. Patient was the word she'd learned early, and lost even sooner. The mechanical problem should have stalled the sedan. It had for most. Graham spotted the cluster of cars idling in an S-curve along Edgecombe Road, hazard lights blinking a warning to lane switchers. Drivers' craned necks swore at their windshields. On the shoulder, two security officers knelt in adjacent lanes, tie pins gleaming, phones to their ears. In the sedan, Adelaide Ashton was slumped against the steering wheel, eyes narrowed, cell phone gripped white-knuckled as the dashboard flashed red. Graham was still a driver. He wasn't supposed to intervene. But traffic had gone to chaos and there was shouting, the sharp, escalating kind that meant real trouble. He set his van's hazard lights, crossed 3 lanes in 5 seconds, and opened Adelaide's car door. The air inside tasted of ozone and manufactured fragrance. The security guards shouted, "Hey, back off, she's calling for help." He ignored them, his voice even. "Are you short of breath, ma'am?" Adelaide barely managed to nod. Graham leaned into the footwell, eyes darting from her posture to the cluster of indicator lights. "It's not the alternator," he said quietly. "It's your pacemaker. Something's interfering." She jerked her head, panic-swallowing protest for a split second. He moved her into the back seat, then, eyes on the glove compartment, swapped her phone for her MedAlert card, pressing it into her palm. "You'll pass out if you stay. Your breathing's compensating." The security officers froze. "How do you?" Graham ran his thumb along the perimeter of the dashboard, dislodged a wireless fob buried above the fuse box, and held it up. "There's your culprit. Some signal scramblers kill more than Wi-Fi." He propped Adelaide upright, keeping her airway clear, murmured brief instructions. "Focus on your toes. Move them when I count. 1, 2, 3, good," and when her breathing eased, pressed her back into the seat. The guards, faces flushed, bickered over protocol. "He's a delivery driver, shouldn't be touching her." Adelaide, rising to herself, tried to dismiss. "Anyone could have Googled that, it's protocol now." Graham met her eye, humorless. "Protocol doesn't usually fit in a glove box." She pursed her lips. "Is that why you're late with packages?" She shifted as if to retake command, hands trembling. "Go back to your van." He nodded once, gaze steady. "Call your specialist, ma'am, and replace the fob." He returned to his van, sliding behind the wheel, ignoring the residue of adrenaline. He heard one guard murmur, "How'd he know that?" before Graham's window hummed up. Adelaide sat, breathing rough, her eyes fixed on the driver's retreating figure. He had seen this before, 20 years ago. Carleen Mays worked compliance audit at Ashton Holdings. She wasn't paid to stare, just to notice. Every system had a human fault line. The driver from earlier, she realized, had bypassed 3 forms of standard security, handled a medical crisis, and walked away with a neutral, practiced calm. She stayed late at her desk, back to the wall, screen turned low as she dug into HR files. Graham Turner was barely a blip, a few temp service stints, regular payroll under logistics, nothing remarkable, except a single line marked declined position, teaching fellowship. No degrees listed, no teaching credentials, no disciplinary flags. Curious, she scrolled. A patent submission linked to a G. Turner 12 years prior, a novel educational software algorithm canceled before release. The archived file was grainy, a scan from an outmoded fax, but the names matched. She followed a trail, grant documentation, one Rhodes scholarship, withdrawn, explanation sealed, a teaching stint at a charter school in another state. All before the trail blurred into a decade of hourly shift work. Carleen printed the patent copy, palmed it for her supervisor. Meanwhile, elsewhere, Mia squared her Polaroid at the lunch table, fingers tunneling at a grape she didn't like. School lunchroom noise fell away as she spoke to her new seatmate. "Sometimes my daddy works late, sometimes he draws notes. He says you can make invisible letters appear with a lemon." Her seatmate giggled, eyes wide. "Why lemon?" "He says magic is just science adults forgot, but people forget lots of things." Mia blinked, then said, "Are you being mean to someone because they're not your friend?" The girl glanced at her lap. "Maybe, I dunno." Mia shook her head, but she needs a friend. The teacher peered across the room, catching only the outline of Mia's Polaroid as she tucked it safely away. Back in the compliance office, Carlene's supervisor frowned. "Leave it, Maze, it's above our pay grade." "Is it?" Carlene whispered, watching the calendar reminder lease end, 11 days flash on screen. She thumbed the patent, felt the weight settle behind her forehead. Soon after, just past dusk, a man in a charcoal suit cut across Graham's path as he locked his van for the night. The stranger flicked an identification badge, half shown, half sheathed. "You Turner," the man's drawl was deliberate. Graham nodded, wary. "You fixed Miss Ashton's mess today, good hands." The badge disappeared. "We're offering a fee." Graham's reply was precise, as if he'd rehearsed it. "I don't take money for that work." The man smirked. "Sometimes there's more than money on offer." Graham pocketed his hands. "Sometimes there's more to a job than you think." The man regarded him for a pause, then flicked a business card onto the van's seat. "Use it, or don't, not my call." He left. The streetlights blinked alive, one by one. That night, Graham erased his whiteboard budget, rent deadlines, a tally of possible school choices, then wrote "Ask Me a Ray, field trip." He didn't sleep well. The city felt suddenly small and less forgiving. By the end of the week, it had turned. Someone from management called the logistics office at 7 a.m. Turner was under review. A memo followed, holding all future routes pending HR screening. Next, his building's parking garage denied his entry. Unit not registered. He spent half an hour at the gate arguing with a recording. A neighbor sidled past, eyes averted. At school, Mia lingered after class, Polaroid clutched tight. Her teacher murmured, "There's been a change in your after-school pickup list, sweetheart. Someone else is coming today." Mia frowned, but Daddy always comes. He has to, or else he gets in trouble. Her voice cracked, and for the only time that week, she let a single tear track her cheek before drying it with her sleeve. Meanwhile, in a glass-walled boardroom, Adelaide Ashton summoned her lawyer. "I want Turner gone, not just from the company, from every place we touch." He hesitated. "That's extreme, Miss Ashton." She stood, hands splayed. "So is failure, make it happen." Across town, Carlene Mays knocked quietly on Graham's door. She held out the grainy patent paperwork, her eyes flinching away from his. He let her inside. "There's history here you're not telling," she murmured. He poured her tea, hands steady. "It's not my history, not anymore." Carlene slid the patent across the table. "You didn't just drive a van, not then." He thumbed the page, tracing the faded signature line. She leaned in. "Why now, why here?" Graham let the question hang. "Sometimes things come due. I'd rather pay than run short." Carlene exhaled, then drew her phone. "They'll retaliate. You've got, what, days before the lease ends?" He nodded, not looking up. "I can survive, but my kid, she deserves better." She hesitated, then asked, "Do you have anyone you trust?" He dialed just one number. It rang twice. "This is Turner. Yes, you can come now." She left soon after, her gait brisk, eyes navigating shadow. It was pouring by then. The city pressed in around every edge. He should not have made this her problem. The main conference room, ash paneling, glass walls, clocks mapped to Paris, London, Chicago, was already full by the time Adelaide swept in, her steps clipped, jaw set. Seated around the oval table, board members, 2 outside journalists, legal, a handful of staff poised for pageantry. Carlene Mays hovered at the periphery, patent folder visible in her hand. No one had summoned Graham, except he arrived anyway, collared shirt pressed, old wristwatch ticking quietly at his pulse. He didn't take a seat, simply stood where window glare left half his face in soft shadow. Adelaide took the floor. "Thank you all for coming, I have an announcement." She gestured at the flat screen. "We value transparency," she said, "even especially in challenging times." Carlene handed the folder to the chair. "There's something you missed, 11 years ago." She snapped the folder open. Inside, a faded patent certificate, the name Graham Turner inked beside a Rhodes Trust logo. The chair cleared her throat, slow and deliberate. "Miss Ashton, can you explain why this signature predates your stake in the company?" Adelaide's face grayed. Her hand fluttered an inch above the folder but didn't touch. Graham's eyes moved from the patent to Adelaide to the board. The room tensed, the kind of collective inhale that precedes something seismic. The chair spoke again. "It is my understanding Mr. Turner was offered and declined a founding share in the original charter. Is that documented?" Carleen held up a resignation letter, Turner, S., gently folded at the creases but unmistakably his handwriting. A journalist in the back murmured, "So why the van?" Another board member punctuated, "Would someone like to summarize for the record?" Graham said, not loud but unmistakable, "I never asked for the seat, you took it from me." Adelaide flinched. "That's not the line written here." Her hand hovered over the signature field, knuckles whitening. The assistant looked down, tapping pen nervously against his leg. Across from him, a journalist's mouth parted, searching for words that didn't come. By the door, a junior lawyer tried and failed to gather her papers. For a second, no one spoke. The patent file seemed heavier than all the board's corporate trappings. Adelaide tried too late to regain footing. "You said you didn't want it that day. You vanished." Her voice barely registered. Graham's gaze met hers. "Some truths surface whether you sign them or not." She started, "You," but her reply broke incomplete, and the silence swallowed it. The room waited, caught poised on that sharpest ledge. "Is this a joke?" Her voice was the only thing left to fill the vacuum. 6 months later, Mia's Polaroid hung, freshly matted, on a pinboard in her new classroom. She'd written her own name in pencil underneath, precise but shy, "Mia Turner, grade 3. Her lunchbox note, today's read, "Ask Miss Lake about invisible ink," tucked under crackers, a secret between her and her dad. In the background, Carleen paused on the playground fence, clipboard in hand, the supervisor badge new on her lanyard. She watched Mia circle a jump rope, cheeks flushed. Every so often, Carleen glanced over at the number Graham had scrawled at the bottom of the patent file and smiled to herself. At home, Graham pulled last year's rent notice from his desk and tore it, finally, in two. His back still twinged in protest, but the tension no longer reached his jaw. That night, Mia stood in the hallway, Polaroid in one fist. She asked, quiet but unafraid, "Dad, are mean people always mean?" He crouched to her height, hand resting on her shoulder. "No, honey, sometimes they're the ones trying hardest to be seen." She nodded as if that made the world easier, and slipped the Polaroid onto the coffee table. A city holds more secrets than confessions, and sometimes justice is the gentle absence of old debts. Alone, Graham watched the soft light spill from the kitchen, listened to Mia humming her mother's favorite tune, and let the night settle into silence he no longer feared. The phone buzzed once, an old tone Graham hadn't changed in years, and he nearly let it ring through. But Mia, already brushing her teeth, called out, "Aren't you going to answer, Dad?" He scooped the phone from the table, heart ticking faster at the unfamiliar number flashing across the screen. "Turner," he said, voice pitched low. The voice on the other end was precise, her words sculpted by caution and control. "Mr. Turner, this is Adelaide Ashton." A beat. "It will only take a minute." He almost set the phone down, uncertainty crawling along his spine. But something in her tone, an absence of command, a rare vulnerability, held him. "I wanted to say thank you," Adelaide continued, "for what you did in the sedan that morning and for not exploiting everything you could have." Graham waited, holding the silence with deliberate patience. She inhaled, the static crinkling. "Perhaps you deserve more than I allowed. The world will remember you as it chooses. I can't change that, but the board agreed. There is a severance, substantial, I hope. It will arrive by tomorrow." He exhaled, tension unraveling by small degrees. "My daughter's safe, Miss Ashton. That's more than enough." "We're not all monsters, Mr. Turner." She hesitated, voice trembling just once. But I know it's easy to forget that when everyone faces you as an adversary. Graham found himself saying, softly, maybe you just need more space to be seen. There was a click of acknowledgement, almost a smile in her breath. Take care of yourself, Turner, good evening. The call disconnected, leaving only the quiet hum of home. Mia's humming threaded through from the bathroom, buoyant and secret. He tucked the phone away. In the months that followed, an uncanny ease seeped into their lives. The bureaucratic obstacles, blocked parking tags, or snowstorms, housing warnings, began to unravel not overnight but in a slow, gentle shedding. Sometimes, when he unlocked the van for a rare gig, old faces nodded with a new respect, no longer seeing a mere driver but someone who had been a part of something critical, even if they didn't fully understand what. Mia thrived at the new school. With each day, her letters grew neater, her jokes more elaborate. The Polaroid became an artifact of comfort, her talisman. Twice a week, she signed up to help pick library books for the other kids. Once she brought home a note from Miss Lake, bright green ink stating, "Mia showed great empathy this week." She helped a classmate who felt left out. She handed Graham the note with a proud, private smile. "Like you said," she whispered, "some people aren't really mean, they just feel alone." He tucked the note beneath the Polaroid and ruffled her hair. "I couldn't have said it better." Spring painted the city in hopeful colors, and Graham found himself drawn, now and then, back to his old routines, not for lack of need but out of quiet habit. Night school classes needed tutors, the logistics depot sent postcards about roles for flexible educators. He sometimes accepted, sometimes declined. The choice itself felt like wealth. One evening, Carleen Mays appeared in his doorway, a plastic bag looped through her arm, shrugging off a long day of paperwork. "I found you a gift," she said, dropping the bag on the table. "Warehouse left it behind, they said you'd want it." He pulled out an old clipboard, battered, with a half-erased column of code scrawled in the margin. His name, faded but legible, curved across the top. He laughed, surprised at the sharp pang of old memory. "I thought this was long gone." She smiled, unhurried. "You left your mark in more places than you think." They sat in the kitchen, the city aglow beyond the window. Carleen sipped tea carefully, eyes drawn to the Polaroid at Graham's elbow. "You ever think about going back?" she asked. He shook his head but didn't look away. "Not if it means losing what I have here." Carleen considered this, folding her hands. "You could do anything, you know, the patent, the teaching, even running a company if you wanted." He grinned wry. "Not my game. People like Ashton run at a different speed." "Maybe the world doesn't need another Ashton," Carleen replied, lips quirking. "Maybe it needs someone who notices when the system forgets." They watched the light fade, conversation drifting to other things, school fundraisers, favorite books, the inescapable ache of years gone too quickly. It was quieter now, the kind of evening that filled itself with the possibility of peace. Meanwhile, across town in the Ashton Holdings office, the atmosphere had shifted as well. Adelaide stood by her window, not overlooking the city for strategy, not scrutinizing the horizon for advantage, but quietly watching the people leaving work, commuters, interns, a trio of junior staffers laughing over coffee. Her lawyer entered, file in hand. "Performance reviews, ma'am, all above standard." She waved them away, strangely uninterested. He hovered, sensing the change. "The severance, did you want to revisit the payout line?" Adelaide shook her head. "No, let the record stand." She paused, then warily added, "Make sure Mia Turner's tuition is covered unobtrusively, a scholarship not from us directly." He nodded, impressed. "Yes, ma'am." Alone again, Adelaide opened a drawer, withdrew the old photo, the one of her father's hand on her shoulder. She studied it, finger tracing the young girl half out of frame, face shy almost to the point of disappearing. It was strange, she thought, how the shape of a life could hinge on refusal, the signature not given, the truth not spoken, the debt not paid. Maybe that, too, was a kind of legacy. Mia's field trip loomed on the calendar, circled 3 times with pink highlighter. The night before, Graham checked her backpack twice, slipping in a lemon for the invisible ink experiment. She caught him, giggling. "You don't have to pack magic," she teased. "I always have enough." He lifted her gently, careful of lingering aches. You sure? She nodded solemn. Magic travels with you, like Mom said. He tucked her in, the Polaroid close by on her nightstand, and sat for a moment after she closed her eyes, the hush between them full of memories. The next morning, the sun bright through their curtains, Mia bounded up, already dressed, shoes mismatched but determined. At breakfast, she held up her lunch note and read it out loud. Invisible letters can say anything you want, even secret I love yous. Graham grinned. Then it's a good thing I have a lot to say. At the bus stop, other parents gathered in a gentle murmur, the hum of routine making a backdrop for new beginnings. Carleen approached, clipboard forgotten, and offered Mia a half-wink. Ready to explore? Yes, Mia beamed, rocking on her heels. Do you think detectives can find fossils? Carleen shrugged. If anyone can, you can. Mia sprinted for the bus, waving until the windows rippled and she disappeared inside. Graham and Carleen watched as the bus pulled away, her hand resting for a heartbeat on his arm. Your mother would be proud, you know, Carleen murmured, of both of you. He blinked, fighting the emotion that rose, sudden and unbidden. I hope so. Walking back, Graham let the city's early light warm his face. Everything seemed possible in those moments, each crosswalk, each bird skimming low over the avenue, each note of Mia's laughter lingering in the air. The end of the school year approached, and with it, the parent conferences. Graham sat nervously opposite the teacher, Miss Lake, whose desk bore a mess of colored pens and crumpled smiley stickers. She cleared her throat. Mia is thriving. She's inspired a small revolution in the lunchroom. She started a club for noticing better things. Graham blinked, a smile breaking loose. A club. She nodded, delighted. Yesterday they arranged alphabet crackers to spell welcome for a new student. He sat straighter, feeling the old burden shift. That's really something. Miss Lake tapped a folder. You've built a strong foundation for her, that's rare, you know. He found it hard to meet her eyes, overwhelmed. Thank you, she's done most of the work. When he left, he found Mia waiting under the old chestnut tree, knives scraped, shoes untied, clutching a new book about explorers. She shoved it at him. Dad, did you know some people get famous just for telling stories about places they go? He chuckled. I think you'd be good at that. You could write one too, she insisted. He considered it, maybe, about delivery drivers who save the day. Mia's grin was radiant. Exactly. On the first warm Saturday of May, Graham decided on impulse to bring out the battered firefighter's helmet. Mia helped polish it, their laughter echoing under the open window. When they finished, she tried it on, the brim dipping low over her brow. I feel tall, she declared, voice muffled, like I could see everything at once. Graham knelt, anchoring the helmet gently so it wouldn't tip. Sometimes being tall just means seeing a little farther ahead and helping someone else when you reach the top. She nodded solemn and tipped the helmet back so her eyes were clear. Dad. Yes, detective. Will we always have good days? He hesitated, honest. Not always, but we'll always have each other, and sometimes that's all the magic we need. Mia seemed to accept this, her gaze drifting over the neat stacks of books, the steady hum of street life below. That afternoon, the two of them walked to the small park at the edge of the city, where wildflowers punched ragged holes through pavement cracks. Children ran in bursts of color, ball games and giggles echoing. Mia joined a cluster by the swings, and Graham found a spot on a nearby bench, letting the late sun settle into his skin. He watched her, his daughter, so alive and open, and felt for the first time in years a sense of satisfaction that hadn't come from work or money or recognition, but from the slow, certain weight of knowing he'd endured, that she'd flourished. Across the green, Carleen waved, a picnic basket tucked in one arm. She dropped beside him, eyes gentle. Don't look now, but I think your daughter's started teaching the other kids how to make invisible ink. He chuckled, the sound light. Next she'll be organizing a revolution of lunch notes. Carleen grinned. I'd vote for her. They watched as Mia brandished a lemon with theatrical flair, her audience rapt. She glanced up, catching her father's eye, and for a second the whole world, the past and all its debts, the lost opportunities, the sharp words in conference rooms fell away. Graham breathed deep, sunlight and lemon and laughter and hope mingling on the breeze. The future was unwritten, uncertain, but for the first time he was willing to believe its better possibilities. That night after Mia fell asleep, Graham sat by the window, pen in hand. He pulled a fresh sheet of paper from the stack Carleen had given him and began to write, the words slow at first, then flowing. "To whoever finds this later," he began, "here is what I know. A lifetime can turn on a kindness given when no one is watching, on a truth spoken softly, even when it shakes the world, on a promise kept, even when it is no longer owed." He paused, listening to Mia's soft breath, the night thrum of the city outside. Each of us deserves to be seen, even especially when the world tries to keep us invisible. And when you find yourself on the edge between power and humility, loss and love, choose to reach for someone, not something. That's the real legacy we leave. He folded the note, sliding it into the back of a dusty old book, a marker for a different future. Mgia's Polaroid watched from the pinboard, the edges now curled from so much handling, her pencil signature fading but sturdy. Across the photo, a faint, lemon-flecked message shimmered when the light hit just right. "We are never invisible."